Good morning, Rutgers Prep. It's great to be back at the high school, although this building certainly didn't exist, where I first started to learn what it meant to embrace people's differences. It was my time here, and then on college campuses at the University of Vermont and at Case Western Reserve University, where I started to understand what it meant to view life through other people's lens, to get their point of view. And though that education started in the classroom, it wasn't until 2013 when I walked into the Board of Elections in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, and pulled a petition to run for local office that I truly went on a journey of what it was like to see the world from others and their point of view. I spent the better part of that next year, 9 months, knocking on every single door in the city. And the friends that you meet, the stories that you hear, alter the way that you view the world. But I'll take a step back, because how did I get to the point where I decided that I was going to pull that petition, that I was going to run for office and put my name on the ballot? And that was a decision that I made when I was a high school student here. It was my junior year of high school. I was on my way to school in the morning, and as some of you in the audience might know, our school bus flipped over on the way to school. And I broke my neck and my back. I fractured C5 and C6, which controls your movement, your ability to move. I spent the better part of the next year recovering in rehab, in a surgical procedure at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, where they fused my vertebrae together and allowed me to be here today, moving, walking, talking, running, and I'm thankful every day for it. But when I was in that bed recovering, you have a lot of time to watch TV. And the news was on, and George W. Bush had just signed a few months earlier an executive order to ban all stem cell research using embryonic stem cells. And there was a debate going on live television with scientists and doctors who were using those embryonic stem cells to potentially cure paralysis, among many other things. And that was my light bulb moment of decisions that are being made in Washington or in state houses or in city councils or school boards across this country have massive real-life impact for both positive and negative in people's lives. And though it was a journey between that moment and when I walked into the Board of Elections to get to that point, the thought process started back when I was in high school. So after I pulled that petition and I started knocking on doors, you wind up meeting people who become great friends, close allies, who were strangers just a few minutes before that. One of the first doors that I knocked on was a couple named Roman and Elaine Freeman. And I got to their door, and you could tell Roman was so disappointed that his blinds were open and he made eye contact with me. So he felt obligated to come to the door at that point. So he did, and he opened the door, and they were clearly about to go off to the pool. And I said to them, let me just talk to you for a few minutes about my vision for the city and what I would like to do. We spent the next 30, 40 minutes in their kitchen talking about his journey to America. Roman was a Holocaust survivor. He was 16 months old when the Nazis invaded his town in Poland, Germany. They were moved first into a ghetto, and then he was smuggled into a work camp with his mother. His baby brother, who was born in the ghetto, was murdered by the Nazis. And in the middle of the night, when he was an infant, he was smuggled out in a suitcase and taken to the home of a Catholic Polish woman named Maria Balgovia, who took Roman in from 1941 to 1945, risked her life, risked her family's life to save his life. She also took in Roman's mother, and Roman didn't know that his mother was living in the basement for 4+ years as Roman was upstairs. After the liberation, they were reunited and they came to America together. Roman moved to Ohio, and he has spent the better part of his adult life telling that story to future generations so that that memory, those stories could always live on. We went from a moment where he didn't want to answer the door to we talk to each other on a regular basis and he wants to know when my baby's coming over. And these are experiences that you could only get if you're willing to put your name on a ballot and run for public office. You know, another couple whose door I knocked on was Peter Smith and Lisa Gaines. And they had a very open conversation with me about living in a city as Black Americans represented by 7 white members of city council, 5 white members of a school board, a white mayor, and the challenges that that entailed. And I called Peter yesterday to ask if I could talk about our first conversation together here today, and he was shocked that I even remembered it. But these stories affect the way that you view the world, because his story to me was talking about what he taught his children as they became of driving age in the state of Ohio. And what struck me about that conversation is it was massively different than any conversation that my father had had with me, or any conversation that I would have thought in my head I would have with my daughter, which was, you're going to get pulled over. When you get pulled over, make sure that your hands never leave the steering wheel. Wait till the officer approaches. Make sure he sees you open the window. And then say, my wallet's in the glove compartment, or my wallet's in my right pocket. I'm just going to reach in and get my driver's license for you. It's just not something that was ever part of my American experience, but very much a part of his and theirs. And those stories change your point of view. And after I was fortunate enough to get elected in my first run for office, you take those stories with you every day that you walk into City Hall, and you consider legislation. I think back to the stories from senior citizens I talked to, or from people from different backgrounds and walks of life that I met, and ultimately, that affects my decision making. And what I want to tell everyone here today is, everyone here has the ability to make that difference in your local communities. So often when we talk about running for office, people concentrate on your U.S. senators, your governors, the President of the United States. But in school boards and in city chambers and in state houses across this country, there are really important decisions that are being made. And you could get involved in that decision making immediately. You don't need a large sum of money. You don't need endorsements. I certainly didn't have any of those. I had no support from city council members or the mayor's office. All you need is the grit and determination and the willingness to put the time in and to go meet and listen to the people in your community. And when you do that, you will inevitably learn so much that you didn't already know. You know, it came full circle to me. One of the pieces of legislation that I'm proud of is right after our new president passed his signed his executive order creating a Muslim ban from a host of 7 different Muslim countries. I got the council president on the phone and I said, you know, what are we going to do? I would like to craft some legislation. And we created our own legislation opposing the president's executive order and declaring our city of Beachwood, Ohio to be a welcoming city to all immigrants. And it was a big moment for me when I went to City Hall that night for that vote. And I looked into the city council audience, and the first person that I saw was Roman. And he was sitting there because he too was once a stranger in a strange land. And he was going to lend his voice, his support for everybody in the community, no matter where they were from, no matter what their race was or what their religion was. They too deserved an opportunity to be a part of our American experience. And those moments are invaluable, and you learn from them. And whether it was the introduction of legislation to make meetings more accessible by broadcasting them on TV and the internet to people, whether it was trying to talk about an increase of senior services, because Beachwood, Ohio has the second highest median age range of any city in Cuyahoga County in Northeast Ohio. And so that comes with its own set of challenges. And so every piece of legislation, though, that comes in front of me, I often relate to a moment when I was at somebody's front door or in their driveway or in their kitchen having those conversations. Because it all relates back to actual legislation that's being passed at city levels. And so I'd like to urge everybody to get involved. You could get involved at a young age. You know, when I launched my campaign, I sent out a press release, and it was in the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I got an email the next day from a 15-year-old high school student named Grant. He said, I would like to volunteer in your campaign. Your message really connected with me. I don't have a car yet. Would you meet me for lunch at the Beachwood Mall? And I did the next day. And he knocked on more doors than any other volunteer maybe I've ever seen. I joke because I only won by 60 votes that first election. And I don't want to give the impression that I'm that popular. When you run for office, there's plenty of people who also disagree with you and make that disagreement heard. You know, I joke that I don't know that I win that race without Grant. You know, he's gone on to become an honors political science student at Ohio University, and he's my campaign manager in my re-election race. So, you know, he's managed statewide, you know, he's been a part of statewide campaigns for Attorney General. He's volunteering on Senator Sherrod Brown's re-election campaign in the state of Ohio. So you could get started right now. You don't have to wait. For me, it's been the most rewarding experience of my professional life. And who here is thinking that they might run for public office one day? All right, well, that's not a great sign for us. But I saw one hand in the back. You know, I will tell you that the good experiences, those positive conversations, outweigh any of the negative comments or behaviors that are shown towards public officials. You have the ability to push those aside because the majority of your communities, they want to cooperate, they want to work together, we want to solve issues. So I would urge everybody to get involved sooner rather than later. I'm going to end because my colleagues in City Council who pretty much teased me for being the young guy up at the dais, and as the only millennial speaker today, I think I'd be doing a disservice if I did not end with a group selfie. So, you know, I have to make my generation proud, right? All right, smile, everyone. Thank you, Rutgers Prep. It's great to be back home. Thank you for having me today.